Come, let us explore how I became a meditation teacher, what I actually did. Together, let us relaxingly recite this chapter from the meditation manual titled Easy Enlightenment. The latest draft of this meditation manual is available for free download. Simply use the links in the description area below the video. Together. Patriarchal elitists have worked diligently to mystify the process of becoming a meditation teacher. Come, let us take a good look at the so-called man behind the curtain. In many Theravadan traditions, one has but to live as a monk for 12 years in order to be considered a teacher. In some Mahayana traditions, one could study and meditate for many years, waiting in vain for one's shifu or roshi to appoint one a teacher. Biographies of some Zen masters tell dark tales of such pettiness and favoritism. In the Tibetan tradition, anyone who completed a retreat of 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and 3 hours was labeled as Lama. The problem with that is twofold. First, children of wealthy families could easily afford the expenses of such a retreat, whereas those of modest means could not. Many decades ago, I ate lunch with a Tibetan monk of advancing years who simply could not afford to attend retreat and thus complete his training. Many Tibetans found a workaround to this financial elitism, eschewing the monastery to whom they were required to pay rent and living as homeless long-haired yogis. I think I'm going to do a quick edit. So let's not do that. Let's hit this and this and this. And now let's hit this and this and this and see if this could work better. Okay, let's see. Oh, right. Many Tibetans found a workaround to this financial elitism, eschewing the monastery to whom they were required to pay rent and living as homeless, long-haired yogis. I've been growing my hair out for the last 10 years, but it keeps breaking. Some of these were fortunate enough to find kind teachers as well as survive both exposure and starvation. The second challenge to such a system is that simply doing one's time is no guarantee of acquiring the intellectual comprehension or the spiritual maturation necessary to truly be of benefit to others. On a personal note, I've known some monastics who learned the wrong lessons from demons in monks' robes, he said metaphorically, who considered themselves to be great teachers because they were really, really good at denying others the benefit of the doubt and mocking and coercing others. That is not wise. Let's continue. An additional variable in Tibetan Buddhism are the titles of Geshe, Khenpo, or Kenshin, which, although could be likened to a doctorate of divinity in the West, are less of a promise of both intellectual and spiritual mastery and more of a commentary upon their effort recall, and the wealth of their family. Yongjie Xuanjui's Song of Enlightenment alludes to both the 3-year apprenticeship endured by novice monks and the sad fact that not everyone benefits from such training. As humanity perches upon the precipice of ecological collapse as well as both economic and militaristic barbarism, we stand in profound need of great meditation teachers to help folks master the secular path of peace and love. Let us forget the myths spun by institutionalism and hearken to the wisdom of Proto-Buddhism. In the penultimate passage of the Discourse on the 4 Bases of Mindfulness, the Buddha taught that his path could be mastered in as little as 7 days. The irony is that it could be easier to become a Buddha than a fully qualified Dzogchen Tsemde Lama or meditation teacher. Both Malcolm Gladwell as well as Brian Tracy insist that one can master any discipline in as little as 10,000 hours. Let us consider various ways to sustainably train both our intellectual mastery as well as our spiritual maturity for 10,000 hours each. The key to this endeavor is the practice of informal retreat. Most students begin by attending my live streams twice daily, whether live or recorded depending upon one's schedule and time zone. One can begin by attending no more than 5 minutes per class. Each week one could add an additional 5 minutes. 5 minutes for each stream the first week, 10 minutes for each stream the second week, 15 minutes for each stream the third week, until by the end of the 12th week, one's acclimated to comfortably attend for 60 minutes per live stream. After cruising along in this manner for a month or two, one may flirt with the notion of practicing a 1-day retreat once every 3 months or so. After multiple decades of experimentation, I found the following schedule to be effective and sustainable. 4:30 a.m. wake, 5 a.m. first study, 6 a.m. first meditation, 7 a.m. first break, 9 a.m. second study, 10 a.m. second meditation, 11 a.m. second break, 1 p.m. third study, 2 p.m. third meditation, 3 p.m. third break. 5 p.m. final study, 5 p.m. final meditation, 7 p.m. final break. It is imperative to make the most of the 4 sets of breaks to connect with one's partner, children, and pets, thus ensuring their happiness and continued support of your spiritual training. Do not be surprised. Let's see here. Do not be surprised if your first single-day retreat is a rough ride. But every bump is an education. Listen to your body, respect your needs, jot down questions to ask during the next live stream you attend, and you could make the distinctions that could enhance the pleasure and productivity of future single-day retreats. As months and maybe even years tick by, our single-day retreats could feel less arduous and more delightful. We could even find ourselves so looking forward to them that we begin to practice them 6 times annually and eventually monthly. This renegade Lama considers a bodhisattva to merely be one who feels defined by their practice of mindfulness and meditation, and a monastic to simply be an individual who lives as if on permanent retreat. During one's first 3.5-year retreat, spent collecting their there are 5,000 hours of formal study and an additional 5,000 hours of formal practice. One could be considered an apprentice Lama. During the second 3.5-year retreat, when one is completing their 10,000 hours of formal study and additional 10,000 hours of formal meditation, one could be thought of as a journeyman Lama. Once one has completed their second retreat and has demonstrated both intellectual mastery as well as spiritual maturity, one could rightly be described as a master Lama. In addition to mastering both the material as well as one's mind, it could be helpful to gain expertise in composition and public speaking. Toward that end, I encourage folks to listen or to read or listen to novels composed by contemporary authors whose style of prose speaks to their heart, as well as attend local Toastmasters trainings. Most people do not have the time and finances to live as if on retreat for 7 consecutive years. If one merely studied for 1 hour and then meditated for an additional hour every morning, and likewise studied and meditated every evening, then one could become a Master Lama in 14 years. Sadly, the United States of America has outlawed homelessness, forcing full-time meditation students to find a job, find a patron, or practice in prison. Although there are many Theravadan viharas and some Mahayana monasteries in North America, most of them have become bastions of Yang's religious patriarchy, and as such take a dim view of those who are determined to walk the path of being flexible, loving, rational, laid-back, lucid, egalitarian, cooperative, and kind. Over the past 26 centuries since the Buddha, there have been times and places where it was sometimes more easy and other times more difficult to become a Master Lama, regardless of one's age, health, gender, language, or land. A minority of folks have become Master Lamas. The author of this book is quite disabled and supports himself with the help of his domestic partner and by relying on Medicare as well as Social Security disability. And at the time of this printing, he has not received sufficient patronage as to provide would-be teachers with the food, clothing, or shelter they deserve. Teacher, I'm going to put trainees. And maybe throw an I in there. There we go. And now let's see if this fits. There we go. However, I'm happy to help you however I can through free videos, live streams, Q&As, and PDFs. That you too could likewise help others to master the Buddha's path of mindfulness and meditation. Having completed our opening lesson, it's time for us to now shift gears. It is General Leia Organa Saturday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is the Dzogchen Samde Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I have harnessed my autistic special interests as well as ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I could become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. For the remainder of this morning's live stream, let's play with the latest iteration of very easy meditation practice text, or sadhana, if you're nasty. As we walk through life, every hour we're faced with the same choice. Do we actively compete? Do we passively cooperate with our Buddha nature, or do we actively compete against that? What could the second look like? The latter look like? It looks like relying upon our medial prefrontal cortex. Let's try this again. It looks like over-relying upon our medial prefrontal cortex and our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex to actively focus and actively analyze far too much of the time. Focusing and analyzing is like sprinting. It's excellent in very small amounts. Too much and you injure yourself. Too much active focus, too much active analysis exhausts the front of our brain, causing us to present with symptoms of depression, triggers our amygdala, which is the seat of both anxiety and aggression. Fortunately, neither the amygdala nor the prefrontal cortex constitute the entirety of our central nervous system. Case in point, every time we inhale, we are already wired to automatically access the sympathetic nervous system ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord. This bad boy has evolved to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination. You see, we have evolved to notice all manner of phenomena. From the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the glorious to the grotesque. Every time we exhale, we are wired to automatically access the parasympathetic nervous system, divided between the lower third and the upper third of that same spinal cord. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to support both the physical physical relaxation and mental release to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and less defining. At least until the cycle begins again. So, now that we know the perils of overworking the front of our brain and under-relying upon our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, how are we to passively cooperate with this Buddha nature that some people describe as our autonomic nervous system? Easy. All we gotta do is silently and mentally recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, as well as silently and mentally recite the one-syllable verb ease during our each exhalation. So I found it to be most useful if, while we do this, we maintain as sustainable a posture that we can while respecting the temporary and ever-changing limitations of our body. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist philosophy or meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window if you're watching live, or in the comment window if you're watching a replay. If you're watching live, I check for questions approximately every 12 to 15 minutes. And if you're watching a replay, I'll do my very best to get back to you, probably in a short, over the YouTube platform. Okay, Cowabunga. Remember, it is not our job to become oblivious to thoughts or emotions or circumstances. It's our job to notice, vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, fleetingly, as we breathe in, and relax as best we can as we breathe out. We do not have to force these mechanisms. They are already hardwired into us. All we need to do is passively cooperate. When we read the Vajrayana's five early translations of Prahivajara, the core of Dzogchen, we read that the path is not to worship texts. The path is not to worship real or imagined ancestral teachers. The path is simple. Cooperate passively with our Buddha nature, with our tendencies to notice and release, and to let that to inform our empathy and our centered spontaneity. And then everything else will take care of itself. No need for ritual, no need for sacred initiations. The path is simple and easy. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, including meditation teachers. That the 90% will think it's a wonderful idea to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, and think it's a terrible, terrible idea to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. These people seek to fleece the flock, disempower their students, and lighten their wallets. A good teacher cares only for the empowerment of their students. The purpose of the outer teacher is to reveal the inner teacher, or to help the student find their inner teacher, to make themselves, the purpose of the outer teachers is to make themselves obsolete, not to make themselves wealthy, not to make themselves an object of veneration or superstition. If your teacher treats you like a cash cow or as a tool to bolster his sagging self-esteem, you better shop around. Many teachers rely on fear, telling people that if they meditate wrong, they'll go to hell. Though they have to jump through intellectual and ritual hoops, metaphorically speaking, in order before they receive the highest teachings. But the highest teachers, the Buddha, Yongjia Xuanzhui, Prahevajra, they taught against ritual. They taught against preliminary practices. They just taught a core practice that was easy for any sentient human to practice. If someone says these are forbidden practices, thank them for their time and then run away, because they're either sadly mistaken or trying to pull the wool over your eyes. This path is easy and it is quick. The path of Vajrayana is a separate path from Mahamudra. The path of Vajrayana is a separate path from Ati Yoga or Dzogchen. Dzogchen is different than Bon. Now, just like the purveyors of a Swiss Army knife, a lot of teachers over the centuries, over the millennium, have tried to create a buffet of all the teachings that call themselves Buddhist teachings. Sadly, many of these techniques contradict with each other and create obstacles for each other. Rahe Vajra taught against Mahayoga of visualization and incantation or invocation. He taught against Anu Yoga of channels, winds, and drops. All he taught was Ati Yoga. All he taught was noticing and relaxing in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. I remember at one point, many decades ago, I loved the idea of wearing a mala on my wrist. Even though my teacher told me that was not necessary, I loved the droppings. Similarly, there's so much information that is taught profitably, financially profitably, by fools and charlatans, that we can lose sight of the real purpose of the path, peace and love. If the only way that we can do the right thing is to frighten ourselves with ideas of consequences, corporeal and supernatural, then we have taken a wrong turn. The only morality that is true morality is loving kindness. And the highest loving kindness is spontaneous and uncontrived. And it is the effortless byproduct of noticing and relaxing in harmony with our cycles of breath. If someone tells you that it has to be this difficult, arduous, contrived process, they're either trying to sell you something or they have been sold something. A great irony in Tibetan Buddhism is Ngondro. And teachers say, oh, you can't do Mahayoga, Anu Yoga, or Ati Yoga until you do your Ngondro. But they are already woven in to the preliminary practices. For instance, if one was to read an English translation of Longchenpa's Nyingtig Ngondro, they would see that Mahayoga, Anu Yoga, and Ati Yoga are all present in the Ngondro. And yet, he who is considered to be the greatest teacher of Dzogchen, of Ati Yoga, taught against preliminary practices, against ritual, visualization, invocation, against channels, winds, and drops. If someone tells you it's a difficult path that could take aeons or decades, thank them for their time and then scamper off. The Buddha said his path could be mastered in as little as 7 days. And that the elements of his path were joy and tranquility. Not the goals, but the tools of the path. If our teachers are cranky, if our teachers make us into nervous wrecks, then find better teachers. So many teachers have been indoctrinated since children that fear is a virtue. But it is not. Ancient spiritual texts teach that fear and love are antithetical. And it's one thing to feel fear, but it's another thing to deliberately rely on fear and to manipulate ourselves with fear. That is not the path of peace. That is the antidote to peace. An antidote I do not desire, and I'm pretty sure you do not either. Beware of teachers who speak in riddles, for they are a liar's way of concealing how little they understand. If a man or woman is wise, they will speak plainly. If a man or woman is loving, they will want to clear up confusion for their students, not perpetuate the confusion. Bad teachers are notoriously abusive, and they teach their senior students to be likewise abusive to the neophytes. But that is not what the Buddha taught, ever. That is not what Lao Tzu taught. That is not what the Christ taught. If anyone tells you that they must be cruel to be kind, flee from their presence. For at best they have lost the path, and at worst they're just malicious. There will be times when we remember painful events that we endured. There will be times when we experience confabulations, which are a blending of memory and imagination. Our job is not to reimagine them. Our job is not to figure out how we could have sidestepped it. When we recall, our job is to notice the recollection as we breathe in and relax as best we can as we breathe out. When we fantasize, our job is to notice the fantasy that's playing in the theater of our mind as we breathe in and to relax as best we can as we breathe out. When we consider potential sufferings we might endure due to crime or political upheaval, our job is not to be either a lemming or a villain. Our job is to notice and release. The more we do that, the more our choices and utterances and deeds will flow from centered spontaneity. And that is the key to tapping into the real creative genius that can help us to survive living during quote-unquote interesting times. There is no karma. There's no spooky karma. I mean, clearly there's cause and effect. If you cut yourself, you'll bleed. But there's no spooky karma. Our job is not... The misfortunes we endure are seldom an indictment. I mean, if you scream at a cop and run at him really quick, they'll probably shoot you, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. Not that it's right, but those are the cops we live with in the country in which I live. And so an intelligent person will not poke the bear in the cage. That doesn't mean that every person who's attacked by a cop deserves it at all. But I've said all that to say this. Our misfortunes are seldom indictments. They are not evidence of karmic negativities yet to be purified. They suck. And it's okay to admit to ourselves that things befall us that we don't like. The Buddha was a meditation teacher. We know precious little of what he taught. All we know of what patriarchal institutions have told us. He taught. Patriarchal institutions that are prone to pseudo-spiritual gaslighting. Telling people that if they're being accosted or assaulted, their problem is that they feel they deserve to be treated with decency. That's not spirituality. That's folly. We are wired to want to drink water when we're thirsty and eat food when we're hungry and find warmth when we're cold and find shade when we're hot. We're wired to want, usually, some sort of a sexual partner. We're wired to do these things. Our job is not to repress these things or condemn these things, but to notice these things and release these things, that our inner genius might find kind, sustainable outlets for these. Beware of fools who would tell us that to notice a desire is a spiritual failing, or to want to live without injury or threat of injury is a spiritual failing. Our job is not to repress our desires or be a slave to them, but to be led by love's centered spontaneity, the same love and the same centered spontaneity that are the effortless byproduct of noticing and relaxing. As a neurodivergent survivor of child abuse, let me rephrase that. Like many neurodivergent survivors of child abuse, I was always looking for a way not to be abused. Verbally, physically, sexually, you name it. I really wanted safety. And I believed that if I just said the right things in the right way at the right time and did the right things in the right way at the right time, I'd be safe. That's not always how it works. And so instead of neurotically second-guessing every utterances and every deed and making ourselves profoundly miserable, we can flow from love's centered spontaneity that is the byproduct of mindfulness and meditation, knowing full well that sometimes we will get exactly what we want and other times we won't. Sometimes we'll get what we want, but we won't be able to keep it. Sometimes we'll endure what we want for much longer than we want. I'm sorry, I forgot a word. Sometimes we'll endure what we don't want for much longer than we'd like to. These things are real. The pain they cause is valid. These things are not indictments. These things can be scary. These things can fill us with the full spectrum of human emotion, from the glorious to the grotesque. Our job is not to justify, minimize, or rationalize what we feel, nor use what we feel as license for cruelty. Our job is to notice and release and love and flow. Life is messy. Life can be scary. Life can be beautiful. Let's practice mindfulness and meditation as tools to help us to lead our life as if it was our only life. To dance as if no one's watching. To love as if we've never been hurt. In the underside, or I should say on the underside of our brain, there are two reward circuits. One's dopamine-oriented, one's oxytocin-oriented. One rewards for competition, the other rewards for cooperation. In the middle of our brain, there's two hunks of tissue. One is kind of like shaped like the inside of a bowl. It's called the anterior cingulate gyrus. The other is kind of like a pea. It's called the amygdala. One is very empathetic. The other is anxious and aggressive. We evolved this complex palette of impulses to keep us alive. And they are useful. The right tool for the right job. But if we are to have a fulfilling life, then our default mechanisms must be cooperation and empathy. And the easiest way to assure that is by practicing the noticing and relaxing in harmony with our breathing that is known as mindfulness and meditation. So our job is not to chase trance or experience or jhana or dhyana. Our job is to simply passively notice and relax and enjoy the ride. I don't know about you. I'm a big old coward, and when I've sat in roller coasters, I've clutched the safety bar with white knuckle intensity, visualizing all the ways I could be mangled and crushed and killed. But one of the nice things about noticing those fears and relaxing is that we find ways to still enjoy the ride. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. Oopsie. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately, wrong button. Let's try that again. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's. Let's try this again. I would very much like to return. In 11 hours, I'd like to return to lead tonight's evening meditation class as well as group practice. Until then, if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.